Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman-Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal. We have a special guest for y'all this week. We are chatting with Darkness Dave Schrader. You may know Dave as the former co-host of Darkness Radio or from his numerous appearances on Paranormal TV, including travel channels The Holzer Files, Ghost Adventures, and recently on the Discovery Plus Shock Docs, The Curse of Lizzie Borden, and Demon in the White House. Dave is the host of the new podcast, The Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader. The Paranormal 60 is available on YouTube, Spotify, and pretty much, if you're listening to this podcast now, you can find it. You can find Dave on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or at theparanormal60.com. Hey, Dave, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Not a problem. So you've had many paranormal experiences throughout your life.
Yeah.
From when you were a kid, kind of like a lot of us in the paranormal. I mean, I had my first experience when I was 8. But one story that kind of caught my attention was how you actually got into radio in college.
Yeah, it's weird. So to give you a little background, again, this is the power of intent and how powerful we as humans really are in the world. And I like sharing that aspect of the story because I think people sometimes feel powerless or feel like they're not in control of what they can bring into their lives. When I was a little kid, Eric, I used to love radio. I loved it so much I would sit in my garage with a tape recorder and do pretend radio shows, right? Hey, this is Dave the Wave. We've got a new song from ABBA, right? You know, just doing all these corny little bits like the old radio shows. And I would call local radio hosts in Chicago, and they would actually take my calls or call me back. And they were great. They gave me insights. They gave me information. And that followed through even into college. A lot of them continued to take my phone calls when I was doing radio in college. So I'd always wanted to be a part of that world. Well, I went to Winona State College in 1988, and we had a house right across the street from campus, and I was renting it with 5 friends of mine. And they were like, Dave, you got to get out of the house, man. This was their second year of college, my first year. They're like, you got to get out and meet more people besides us. So I said, all right, fine. And, got cleaned up for the day and walked outside. And as I walked outside, there was, now mind you, it's 1988. So it's day glow colors and short shorts on girls, right? It's a different era. Yeah. And this really cute little blonde with a ponytail comes walking by my house in short shorts and a tank top. And I figured, well, she's heading to campus. I'll follow her and see where this leads. And I followed her across campus and followed her into the Performing Arts Center. Now, before people get all wound up about this is before stalking. This was just called cruising girls back in the day, Eric. That was totally cool. We used to spend hours doing that in the malls when we were teenagers back in the 80s. So I followed her into the Performing Arts Center, and I walked around, keeping a pretty healthy distance behind her. And I followed her past the tryouts for the plays. And I'd done plays growing up, so I thought, maybe, I could try out and meet her through the plays. Nope. I keep walking. She goes up past the concert and choir departments and their tryouts. Nope. And then she goes down to the end of this one hall and goes into the last door on the left. So I make my way down there, and lo and behold, it's KQAL, 89.5, your radio alternative. It was the college radio station, and there was a big sign that said, now accepting on-air talent. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I've always wanted to do radio, and they're hiring, and she works there. So I walked in and was greeted by 5 or 6 guys, and they kind of talked me through it. And, I'll start tomorrow. Sure. Training. Yeah. Okay, great. And then I said, hey, just out of curiosity, I was, just before I came in, there was a really cute blonde with a ponytail that walked in here. Where'd she go? And all of them looked at each other and then looked at me, and they said, do you think if a cute blonde with a ponytail walked in here, we'd be wasting our time talking to you? And they all started laughing. And I'm like, well, did she cut through and go out a back door? And they said, well, the only back door is through a studio, and they're on air in there. So no, she did not. And you could see there was no blonde anywhere to be found in this small area. And I was just kind of blown away. But, something brought me to the radio station. I signed up and did radio for 2 years. Loved it. I went, and that's where I met my former co-host and producer, Tim Dennis from Darkness Radio. And, we stayed friends. He stayed in radio. I went into the real world and got into sales. And it just so happened that come 2005, the end of 2005, Tim was managing a radio station. And he said, "Hey, we have a 1 hour slot on Sunday nights from 11 to midnight to fill. Do you want to do a radio show together again?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." He goes, "What kind of topic?" I said, "How about if we do paranormal? Because there's really nobody else out there offering paranormal radio like Coast to Coast." And he said, "Sure." And so we started on January 1st, 2006 with Darkness Radio. And at that point, we were one of only 4 paranormal podcast radio shows, if you will, out there. There was Jim Harold's Paranormal Podcast, which I think predated us by about a half a year. There was Ghostly Talk, which predated us by about 4 months. And then there was Night Watch, which I think predated us by about 3 months. And Coast to Coast, of course. So we were right there at the beginning. And we are one of the only few, I think Jim Harold and I are the only 2 that are still doing programs like that. And I just left this last January and turned the show over to Tim, who was kind of the silent minority on the show for 16 years. So now he's hosting Darkness Radio. And I've launched my own program called the Paranormal 60, as you mentioned. And it's a 60-minute program every Monday and Friday that we release in a video form on my YouTube channel. Or you can hear the audio version on just about any platform that you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I'm digging the Paranormal 60, and I've been a fan of Darkness
Thank
Radio
you.
for many years, and kind of inspired me to do my own podcast, just to get out and talk
Awesome.
to people. And
Sure.
And also listening to you as a host kind of inspired me, just get on and be yourself.
You're like, hey, if that moron can do this, anybody can, right?
Well, I love how you're just yourself on air and just, make jokes and the paranormal, not downing any other shows. There's just a lot out there that they're way too serious for me. And I like it to be a little more lighthearted and still have some interesting, conversations
right.
and get in depth with paranormal, but you don't have to be so serious about it.
Well, I took it very seriously when we started. As a matter of fact, if you go back into the Darkness Radio archives, which you can hear out there, the first year I'm very NPR, right? It's very, welcome to the show, Eric Freeman. And today it's Darkness Radio. We're going to talk about poltergeists. So, Eric, at what age did you first encounter the poltergeist? So I was very serious. And just slowly as I became more comfortable with what we were doing, I just infused myself as more of my personality into it as opposed to just the host.
Yeah.
And that seemed to go pretty well. People like that aspect.
Yeah. And I think nowadays, especially with all the social media, people kind of want that. They want interaction with you and kind of like they know you. And so, yeah, I think it works great. But yeah, you were one of my inspirations to start the show here, and it's going really well after almost 2 years. And so I was excited to have you on too. For that aspect.
Well, congratulations. That's great. 2 years is a long time to hold out in this environment and to keep doing it. So I said we were one of the first 4, and we truly were one of the first 4. If you looked up paranormal podcasts, it was only one of the 4 of us you would find out there. Now I think on just about every server, I think the last count there was somewhere over 30,000 paranormal podcasts out there.
Yeah.
So it's a tough industry. There's a lot of people vying for that attention and looking for it. So I applaud people that have been able to stick it out for more than a year or 2. And that's great. That shows that you got a good following. You've got that adaptability, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And I approach it. I'm just having fun with it, not looking to riches and fame, in the podcast world.
Yeah, this is the wrong business for riches and fame.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. It's definitely the wrong business. Everybody thinks, I'm going to get in and make this. No, I've done it more for the love of the game, just love doing radio. Now, that has opened up other doors. I got to publish a book that I co-wrote with Patrick Burns and Marley Gibson called The Other Side, a teen's guide to ghost hunting and the paranormal. And if people are interested, they can go to paranormal60.com and click on our store tab, scroll down the page, and you'll see how you can get a copy of that book. So, I got to do that. I got to be a guest star on Paranormal State. I took the kids UFO hunting instead of their Demon of the Week episode stuff. And then I did Ghost Adventures. I did a 13-episode miniseries with Zach Baggins called Paranormal Challenge that was on Travel Channel. I've appeared on, I think, 8 episodes of Ghost Adventures, 2 of their Halloween live specials. So I've had a great time. And, that was, the radio certainly is not making the money for you, but it gave me opportunities to do these other things. And then I began running events, which were darkness events. And we would have, major speakers from the different paranormal TV shows and local speakers. And we'd hit up places like the Stanley Hotel, where The Shining was, that was the hotel that was the inspiration for the movie The Shining in the book. But we, Queen Mary out in Long Beach, California, Eastern State Penitentiary, Mansfield Reformatory, Waverly Hills Sanitarium, Rolling Hills Asylum. So we had a great chance of just traveling around and seeing all of these amazing sites and investigating and getting off the couch. And that was the one thing I wanted to do as a host of the show. Was I didn't want to just passively sit by and listen to people's stories. I went out and I went to those sites and I wanted to be a part of it. And
so that kind of got you rolling as an investigator. With that, still having that curiosity of, since you haven't experienced it your entire life, you kind of have that curiosity of, well, instead of just talking about it, let me go out and experience it.
Right, exactly.
So because you're a family guy and you talk about having 11 kids with your wife now, between the two of y'all.
Right. Well, now I'll clarify that. I have 8 children. My wife has 3 children. So we have 11 between us. We didn't have 11 together because I think she'd be nothing left of her at this point. But, right, we have 11 children between the two of us.
What are any of your kids interested in investigating into the paranormal?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My kids love the paranormal. They've all gone at different stages. My oldest son, he was a part of, my very first Stanley Hotel event with the Ghost Hunters. Just before he shipped off to be in the Navy, he came to that event and had a great time. And then he visited a few times when he was in the Navy. He came out to the Queen Mary, events that we held. And then my second oldest daughter, Kayla, she's gone to a bunch of my events and has ghost hunted, and my mom and aunt were a big part of it. They'd come out and my son Nathan. And so they all kind of age out of it after a while, but I've got, 2 teenage daughters that are still very into it and, like going out and, going to safe locations with me to investigate.
Yeah. And I've talked about on the show here because I think that a lot of people were kind of taught out of the paranormal of having experiences when they're kids. And so to grow up in an environment with a dad like you who, is fostering that if they have an interest to go out and experience it, and also not dumb down their experiences if they've ever had any themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what it's all been about. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't been stupid from time to time and dismissed what they've said, right? Sometimes you roll your eyes. Oh, yeah, sure. And then you find out that, oh, no, they're having an experience. My son, Nathan, when he was very little, one day he came down from his bedroom and he said, Dad, I want my friends to spend the night. And I'm like, what friends? You're 3, 4 years old, whatever. And he's like, all my friends upstairs in my room. And I'm like, okay, sure, they can spend the night. And then he gives me his toy phone. He goes, you need to call their parents. I'm like, how does he know? Well, we've never had a sleepover. How does he know I'm supposed to call their parents and get permission?
Yeah.
So I pretended to call the parents and give permission. And he was up there playing for a while. And all of a sudden I heard him starting to yell. No, I won't do that. No. That's naughty. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell my dad. And then he came down and goes, Dad, I think you need to send these kids home. They're being naughty. And I'm like, oh, what are they doing? Well, they want me to jump out of my window or they want me to jump off the top bunk and just doing things that were not great. And so I stormed upstairs and I told the kids to knock it off. There's nobody there. It's just my son. And I said, I'm calling your parents. You're all going to have to go home. And that was it. And he was fine after that. But there were other experiences. I was sleeping, my wife and I were separated and I was down in the basement sleeping on the couch. And my son Linus came downstairs with my ex-wife and she said, tell your dad what's going on. He goes, Dad, my sister's shadow's running around in our room. And I go, your sister's shadow? He goes, yeah, Dad, I keep seeing Pacey's shadow. And I go, honey, she can barely walk and she's in her crib. She can't get out of her crib. No, Daddy, I saw her. And I'm like, okay, well, you're just dreaming, buddy. Here, just lay down on the floor next to Dad. And I put a blanket down for him. And then she goes, tell him the other thing, Linus. And Linus looks at me and goes, oh, yeah, there's the boy on the top bunk, Daddy. And I said, well, that's your brother Nathan. And he goes, no, Daddy, Nathan's sleeping. This boy on the top bunk is sitting on the top stair. And he's looking at me like this. And he tips his head and kind of gives you that under the eyebrow stare.
Yeah.
And it was chill. Because my kid looked like young Ron Howard from the Andy Griffith Show, Opie, bright red hair, big eyes, freckles. And to have him kind of give this look, it made my blood run cold. So I went storming up the stairs, threatening anything that's in there and praying to God that when I opened the door, there was not some creepy ghost kid sitting next to my son. And then I gathered the kids and brought them downstairs, and we all slept downstairs. And so, there's been things like that throughout my career, but I'm lucky to be friends with people like exorcist Adam Bly, demonologist John Zappis, Father Andrew Calder. So when I would have issues where I thought maybe something was a little more uncomfortable than I wanted it to be, I had a great resource to go to help me figure out how to get rid of these things.
Yeah. Do you think that stuff that followed you home from investigating and doing events, or?
It's hard to say, because I don't have a sixth sense gift like that. So I can't look and see a ghost and say, oh, you're from the Palmer House. Oh, you're from Eastern State, and you need to go back. I have no idea. It may just be that when you entrench yourself in something so long, right, that you kind of start to attract it. It's like taking a paperclip. A paperclip is not magnetic. But if I rub it against a magnet for a few seconds and then take it and touch another paperclip, it'll stick to it. And that'll actually transfer down to 2 or 3 different paper clips. So you kind of get that resonance on you. So I might just be attracting ghosts in the neighborhood. I might be attracting the ghost that's in this house. I don't know for certain. It's, like I said, it's hard to tell, but I try to deal with it. And I don't really, I'm very cautious. I do a lot of prayer and protection for myself, my house, my family. So we really don't have issues. We've had ghosts here, and I think sometimes they just need to be heard and helped. But I've never felt like we're in any danger, really.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of protecting myself before I go out to places. Then when I come back home, I sage my house and things like that. And I typically have a resident ghost that I'm pretty sure I brought home a long, long time ago before I really knew what I was doing. I see him every once in a while, and he does things around the house. But we have an understanding of, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone type deal. But for the most part, I don't really have much of a problem. I've been doing this for 25 years, so long before the TV shows and stuff. When I was a teenager, going out and trying to figure this stuff out, and then before there was even a term ghost hunter, kind of, you've been doing it for a really long time too, and who knows what a ghost hunter is, but
actively, I've been doing it for about 17 years, but I've had the paranormal around me my whole life. That's what, when I co-wrote the book, The Other Side, we originally wrote it for everybody. The publisher threw the name teen on the cover, so it became The Other Side, a teen's guide to ghost hunting and the paranormal. But the book's written for everybody. They just were trying to cash in, I think, on the Twilight market at the time. And, I took a lot of heat because why would you write a book for teens? And then I had to remind people, when did you first start having your experiences?
Right.
Well, when I was a kid or as a teenager. Right. Wouldn't it have been nice to have a book to go to help you understand what you're going through so that you don't think you're crazy, so you don't feel so alone, so that you don't, and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. So, there was a lot of anger towards me when the book first came out. But once people had a chance to step back and realize, that's we teach sex ed in high school because that's the age kids are starting to get an interest. And we want them to understand what they're going through, what their bodies are going through, and what to do to be careful. So why wouldn't we do the same when it came to the paranormal, especially because kids are so attracted to it, and there's a million TV shows out there. Let's at least educate them on the proper way to do things.
Yeah, and I think because you see so much on the shows, people starting out, they need some sort of way to understand how to investigate, and the do's and don'ts. I think for the most part, most of us say don't go in and provoke and be disrespectful. And also, I think the history is, and I preach this on the show a lot, that understanding the history of a place is very important too when you're going and investigating. And so to give people a guide, to go by, I think that's great, especially teenagers, because this is a huge. Right. Like you were saying, we all got into this when we were teenagers. And like I said, I started going out with my friends and going to cemeteries and other places and sneaking in some places we probably were trespassing, but trying to figure it out, and didn't have any guidance whatsoever because there weren't TV shows back in the 90s.
And even the TV shows that existed and still exist, they're an entertainment form, including the Holzer Files. You don't see all the work that goes into getting into those positions. You don't see how we do the research. You don't see how we do the history. And everybody that says, oh, well, you guys should show that, it would bore the hell out of the viewer. And there's viewers that are going to swear, no, I would love it. You wouldn't. You'd love it maybe for one episode, and then you'd be like, oh, God, just get to the ghost hunt. What's the evidence? That's what people really want on these TV shows. So, any show that's tried to tackle it in a more scientific way, meaning that they show all the steps, doesn't last very long. So it's kind of telling for the type of audience that we've got out there. So a lot of people learned what they learned from watching TV, but they've only learned a fraction of what they're supposed to do, or why we're doing what we're doing, why we use the tools we use, when there's a lot more to it than just blinks and lights up when a ghost is near. The tools were originally brought in to disprove the paranormal. These tools were brought in to show you there are natural issues like EMF force that might be naturally occurring from old appliances or your own geography. So if we can show you, look, that you have a natural high EMF field here, which can disturb you and give you the feeling that you're being watched or that there's a ghost here or something, that's what it was for. But then we realized that something was also being able to interact with those tools. So that's how the tools became adapted into, well, let's try to use them as a communication device.
Yeah. And I've always been the type of person that I don't need a whole lot of tools. I just EVP and pretty much my own personal experiences, which I've had quite a few investigating. It's fun. Right. It's fun to use the technology, but it's also fallible, like you're saying. It was brought in to disprove this stuff. And I will more likely use an EMF meter, like you were saying, to say, oh, well, this Wi-Fi router is putting out, insane number on the EMF meter, so this could be causing some of this stuff. As opposed to really trying to communicate with spirits that way, I'd rather try to get EVPs and things like that as proof, more proof for myself than anything.
Yeah, that's what it's about, right? Is trying to understand it. And I think people are too tech dependent, and I like the technology as well, but be in the moment, have the experience. Everybody's like, well, what do you say to people that don't believe you? I don't say anything. I don't need them to believe me. Right. I've had the experience. I question myself, and I will ask experts in different fields for insights and help on an idea. And that was it. It was just kind of, it's about my experience. Then when I started stepping in and trying to help families or businesses, I lean on my network for insights that I might be missing. And I show them the evidence. And I'm like, before I take this back to the client, can you give me any rational explanation for this? And, when you've got 4 or 5 people putting eyes on it and they're all like, no, I cannot, or yeah, maybe you should go back and try to photograph it doing this or doing that. And, that gave me an opportunity to kind of try different things and then see if there's an element of something natural that's occurring that would cause that artifact to look as though it were supernatural.
Yeah, yeah. And I've heard you here lately talking about, and this is something I've kind of dived into, especially I kind of first saw it from Nick Groff with his new series that he does, Deathwalker, but talking about some of the hauntings are maybe more likely time slips than actual intelligent, spirits and that type of stuff. And to me, that kind of makes a lot of sense. For a lot of the things that we're experiencing. Maybe we're even part of our own time slip, and that's kind of what Nick jumped into in one of the episodes of Deathwalker, that maybe he was actually talking to himself when he was at that location a previous time. Right.
And yeah, I've been talking about the time slip phenomena for 16 of the 17 years I've been doing the investigations. I've wondered what exactly is it that we're running into. And I believe that there are many different factions. I don't think we're ever going to get one definitive answer. I think that there is dead people, their souls that remain. I think that there are dead people there's fractions or fractals of their souls that remain, maybe wounded moments, excited moments. Those are the replay moments we see. I think that there are alternate realities or parallel universes we might be rubbing up against from time to time and just getting a little bleed through. We may be dealing with these time slip phenomena. And to explain that to listeners that may not understand, just imagine that the place you're sitting in right now, right where you're sitting, this spot on this planet has always existed since, boom, the planet emerged. And it will continue on long after you're gone. And figure, like looking at it, this spot is a book. The back cover is when the earth was created. Every page in between is the story of every person that's ever stood on that spot. The back or the top cover is when the world ends and we're all gone. Well, you're going to have all these pages touching one another. And from time to time, there's going to be some bleed through. Sometimes we're going to run into these moments. And I don't always think that the haunting we're dealing with is from our past. I think that we may be dealing with things from the future. And my favorite story to share, and this was one of the first tales I was told, this guy His grandparents built a house out in an old cornfield. That there was no ancient Indian burial ground, no murders, no death, nothing took place here. Nobody died in the house. And one day, Grandma's sitting in the living room. During the day, 3 shadowy figures walk in from the dining room area, walk in front of Grandma's chair, turn around, and run out of the room. Now Grandma's house is haunted.
Right.
And now we're all acutely aware of it. We start hearing things and noticing things more often. So everybody starts talking about the ghost at Grandma's house. Well, Grandma passed away. A few years later, this guy and his 2 buddies walked into the living room and came in from the dining room, walked into the living room, and there sitting in the chair was Grandma. And the 3 of them looked at each other and ran out of the room, and it hit him. Oh my God, this is exactly what my grandmother described. Who was haunting who in that moment?
Right.
So they were sharing that same time and space, that same moment. And it just so happened that the veil was a little thinner, if that's an easier explanation. And we were able to see through that moment.
Yeah, and we all like to think as time is linear because that's kind of how we measure it. But in the physics world and quantum physics and all that, they measure time as like it's all ongoing at the same time. And so if you look at it that way, that all time is happening at the same time, then why couldn't we have these time slips or these thinning of the veils where we peer into the future or in the past? And I keep hearing more and more of those stories, especially here lately in the past few years. I talked to Andrea Perrin here on the show, and one of the famous stories that she tells is about her mother having like a time slip where she kind of saw a portal in the Conjuring house, and they looked back at her. She was a ghost to them, and they were ghosts to her, but she was just seeing a window into a different time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think sometimes that haunting could just be the people that are about to live in your house 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Maybe they're hearing something bumping around, and it's you right now.
Yeah, kind of like that movie The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So do you think, you said the thinning of the veil, and I've heard this from a lot of people the past few years. Do you think that the veil is thinning more, or do you think that people are just coming out more with their experiences? I
think it's a more hyper awareness, right? It's like a mnemonic trigger. So I always tell people this, right? When PT Cruisers came out, if you remember that car, I loved them because they look like an old 1930s gangster's car.
Yeah.
The black ones, right? The silver ones. I was like, boy, those look cool. Those look great. And I loved old movies. So I went to go buy one. And they were sold out of the black. They were sold out of the silver. The white just looked like a crappy ambulance to me. And there was a purple one. And I'm a Vikings fan. And I love the color purple. And I'm like, I don't ever see anybody in a purple PT Cruiser. I'll take it. And I drove home and saw 20 PT Cruisers that were purple on the way home because now I was awakened to it.
Right.
Now it was something I'd always liked, the black and the gray silver ones. So that's all the ones I ever saw on the road. My brain tuned out everything else. Now that I owned a purple one, all I ever saw were purple PT Cruisers. So it's the same with doing this kind of work. And once you kind of open up to it, you start to notice more and acknowledge more, and you recognize patterns. So that, that's part of the problem too with pareidolia, where we look at an oil spot and we see an oil spot on the driveway and it looks like Elvis, right? Or a water spot on a window that looks like the Virgin Mary. Our brains want to make sense of anarchy and chaos. So especially where it comes to faces, we will see things and see faces more often than not. So you have to really question, am I truly seeing a face, or is it just the right shadowing? The leaf is in the right place and the branch is in the right place. So it's causing this look that makes it look like you're looking at a face out in the trees. So there's a lot to that. And so I said, before you rush to claim something as paranormal, I want to break it down. I want to go through all the different elements of it, take pictures at different times of day. Is that image always there? Then it's obvious that something's creating that and it's not a ghost, right? And just trying to de-evolve the situation and look at it from all angles instead of just the one, which I always feel bad. People send me pictures, and they have for years, and they're like, can you tell me, what is this? I go, yeah, it's a picture with a weird anomaly in it. Well, so it's a ghost. I don't know that to be true,
right? Because
I don't know the 360-degree view. I don't know if there's something behind you, like a window up on a landing, that there is a light coming through and it's casting this glimmer on the door. When you take the picture, yes, it looks like a ghostly image, but it might actually be light coming in through a stained glass window up and behind you. I don't know what's causing the different effects. So I need kind of a full 360 view to get the full value of it. And people now they're starting to understand that, and they start taking multiple pictures to give me that sense. But it's really hard. It's kind of like when somebody hands you a picture and goes, "Is this a ghost?" That's like giving me a 2,000 piece puzzle that's all upside down and flipping one piece and going, "What's the image on this?" I don't know. I can't tell without seeing the entirety of everything involved. Is there a mirror? Were they shooting it through glass? Were they in the car taking a picture through the window as opposed to the window down? Are they getting a reflection back of their own face? I can't tell you what they're getting. So, it's a lot of it is detective work. You really have to break things down and understand what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get people messaging me too about, I'm having experiences. Here's pictures that I've taken. And yeah, I find myself being like, I have so many questions, but if you want somebody to investigate, then I can put you in touch with somebody in your area that will come investigate, and try to help you out with this phenomenon.
Right.
If it's something that's bothering you. But as far as just looking at pictures, like me personally, I would have to be there, like you're saying, to see all these variables and see what's going on.
Oh, I still love to look at pictures. I still love to look at what they have, because I still like to challenge myself by looking at a photograph. Can I maybe figure out what it is? Or I love the ones, I was just at the Palmer House Hotel this last weekend, and we did an investigation, and a woman came up to me and she goes, "Hey, I want to show you a picture. It was taken last time I was here." And her friend was taking a picture into a mirror, and it was just her. There's no motion streaks on the camera, like she moved it a little bit. Everything's in perfect focus, but behind her is a profile of a face walking past her, and there's no human there.
Yeah.
That's a great, wow, what the hell is that, right? So I love those kind of things and having that challenge.
I think one of the photos that the line of photos that drives me crazy are the orb photos that you see on all these different paranormal groups and stuff.
Especially this far into the game, when so many shows have debunked orb pictures and shown you that they're not. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that are kind of interesting. When we did the Holzer Files, I told them straight from the beginning, listen, I know a lot of these paranormal shows throw out these images and they claim they're ghosts. I've been saying on my radio show for 13 years, this is not a ghost, and here's why. So if suddenly you're asking me to say this is a ghost, it's going to go counterintuitive to everything I've ever said. And they're like, okay, that's cool. So there were only 2 episodes where we introduced an orb as possible activity, but only because there was something else going on in the video. Like in the one scene, we were on the USS Constellation in Baltimore, Maryland, and you see this orb, and it's very weird. It's like it's shuddering, almost like it's walking. And as it walks past one of the hammocks, you see the hammock start swinging. So it was an interesting and different looking orb than I'd ever seen. And as it passed an inanimate object, the inanimate object began moving. So there were 2 things correlating in that. Another one we did at this Bob Mazziello's house, we had a room blocked off. We had an X-cam up on the bookshelf shooting down into the room, and suddenly you hear the sound of footsteps, and you see this orb kind of float down, and then it goes over our shadow trackers on the floor, and you see the shadow trackers light up. A bug's not going to do that.
Right.
Dust isn't going to do that. So that we have footsteps, an orb, and as the orb flies over the shadow tracker goes off. That is intriguing to me, but 99% of the rest of things that people produce as orb or ghost activity to me that they think is an orb, I usually dismiss pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah. What irritates the shit out of me is that people will put these photos of orbs up and they're asking, do you think, they're asking the general public, do you think this is something that is paranormal? And you'll have photographers weigh in, you'll have paranormal investigators weigh in saying, this is just a, light anomaly from, the sun or a lens flare or something. And the people just don't want to believe it, but they've asked. Right. I think that's what gets me the most is that they're asking, is this something real? And then when they're told no, they don't want to hear it.
People have, they believe their house is haunted. You go out and you prove to them it's not haunted and they're pissed off at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a woman when we first started this, because I do get a lot of pictures. This woman sent me a couple of pictures. They were interesting, but like I said earlier, I could see that it was the play of light coming through the trees that made it look like a face. It was not a face. And she didn't like that answer. And then there was another image that she said, oh, there's this man and a dog standing in this tall wheat field. Well, you could see the sun coming through the wheat. You could see some of the wheat barrels bent. And it was creating an illusion of looking like a human-like shape and a dog-like shape, but you could see that the reeds were bent. And then she goes, fine, whatever. You can't debunk this picture. It was taken in Pennsylvania in an old mining town that closed in the 1980s. Nobody lives there. There was nobody else there. I was walking down the street taking pictures, and I took a picture in an old grocery store, and look what I caught looking out at us. And I look, and I'm kind of looking at it. There's so obviously not a ghost in this picture. So I'm enlarging, and I'm like, because sometimes people will put a hand on a window, and then they walk away, and the grease from your hand leaves an imprint, and from a distance with the light, it can look kind of like the profile of a face or something.
Yeah.
So I'll enlarge that. I'm looking even for orbs. There's no orbs in this picture. There's no other thing. And I sent the picture back to her, and I'm really sorry. I'm not seeing anything ghostly in this photograph. She's like, what kind of investigator are you? Are you blind? It's standing right in the door of the grocery store looking out at me. And I looked at it again, and I'm like, oh man. Yeah, there's definitely something standing in the door looking out. No doubt there's a man standing in that door looking out. So I go on eBay and I type in James Dean cardboard cutout. And in the 80s, they took Elvis, James Dean, and Marilyn Monroe, and they photoshopped Diet Coke cans in their hands. And there were these large cardboard cutouts that were given to grocery stores. And I sent it to her, and I said, here's that image. This is the cutout of James Dean. It's an old Coke ad from the 80s. She goes, well, I can see how you think that's it, but I promise you it was not there. So I enlarged her picture, and I stapled it right next to my picture. I circled the hair. I circled the open red jacket with the white T-shirt underneath, and I even circled the damn Coke can in his hand, and I sent it back to her. And her response was, well, I thought you were a believer in the paranormal field. You're just going to try to debunk everything, and it's obvious you don't even believe, so I'll just take this somewhere else. So I took a breath and I wrote back. I go, you know what? After reviewing the picture one last time, I think you're right. I think that grocery store is haunted by a cardboard cutout of James Dean. And that was the last time I ever heard from her. So, it's sometimes you want to believe so bad that you're willing to overlook logic.
Yeah.
On Darkness Radio, we had a man come on our radio show, and he was going to be on for 2 hours. And he was an EVP expert, so electronic voice phenomena expert. He gets some of the most remarkable EVP ever. This is all what he was telling us in his press release. He works with the Ryan Institute. He works with this place. He works with that place. Highly respected. He has linguists that work with him. He has audio engineers and technicians with over 50 years experience that review the audio and video he collects. And he spends the first hour of the show, and his name was Ed Zasky. And he spent the first hour of the show totally destroying every paranormal TV show and how schlocky they are in their investigations and the crap that they present as paranormal activity is not, blah, 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 blah. So it was, okay, man, that's setting a high bar. And then he goes, in hour 2, we're going to share some of my best EVPs. Okay. And he comes out swinging. He did not want to start with a weak EVP and move his way up to the best. We went right to his holy grail piece. And he tells me about how they're investigating this old property, this amazing story. They are doing this, and they capture this audio piece. Now, it's disturbing to hear. And it's a long dead language. He's given it to linguists. He's given it to audio engineers. They cannot make out what the spirit is saying in this old dead language. But the real message was in when you reverse it. And we've all heard, sometimes EVP, if you reverse it, you can hear a clear message.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, cool. And he goes, when you reverse it, you hear it say, it's my baby, save it. Wow. And sure enough, we play it backwards and you hear, it's my baby, save it. Wow. That's crazy. We play it forward and we hear this thing. Now he's already planted in my mind that it's a long dead language. So I'm thinking it's going to be Aramaic or a form of Latin. So I want to write it down phonetically. And it says AVS Media Demo. So I'm like, AVS Media Demo. What does that mean? And I phonetically write it out and I type it into my browser. And there's a company called AVS Media. And I asked the guy, and I go, Ed, just out of curiosity, have you ever heard of the company AVS Media? And he goes, oh, sure, we use their audio software. And I said, okay. And you've listened to this piece? Because it was interesting. You know, an EVP is always kind of a buried sound.
Right.
Like you hear Dave, is there anybody here? And then you hear, yes, I'm here. It's real quiet and gravelly and raspy or whispery. This thing was like over the top of everybody else. AVS Media Demo, right? And I told the guy, well, what you have here is called an audio watermark. You're using a free version of the software. So when you record on it, you play it back every minute or two, they're going to play this audio watermark.
Right.
No, that's not it. So we go to commercial break, and I tell Tim, my producer, I said, do me a favor, record yourself saying AVS Media Demo, and then reverse the audio. So we come back from the break. I tell him again, I say, now listen, during the break, I had Tim do this. Now we heard the exact phrase, is my baby, save it. Let's listen to what happens when Tim reverses himself saying AVS Media Demo. And sure as shit, we flip it around and you hear Tim say, is my baby, save it. You're comparing apples to oranges, and this is two totally different things, and blah, 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 blah. And so okay, let's listen to some of your other audio. And his other audio was complete garbage, complete junk. And, you know, I come back, I try to talk to him again about it. He just keeps getting more rude and belligerent. We ended up hanging up on him on our show. The episode blew up. We had well over 1.5 million downloads of the episode. People were passing it around. They loved it. Ed Zasky, you know, threatened me an email. Oh, you're a flash in the pan. I'll be wrong. Or, you know, decades after your stupid show is forgotten. Well, we're 17 years in and people still listen to Darkness Radio and Paranormal 60 podcast.
Right.
Nobody knows who Ed Zasky is except for that bonehead that did an episode of Darkness Radio and got called out. He did Coast to Coast. He did a couple other shows, but just kind of vanished off the face of the world. And then we did some research, and his connection to the Rhine Institute was that he is a donor.
Oh, wow.
But he's not like a member of the Rhine Institute. And, you know, it's just all of these claims were kind of these parceled out claims. And I had an audio engineer come on the next night and explain how this mistake had happened. And I even sent the guy, I go on YouTube. Here's the links. These videos have been up for 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. Watch this because they have an AVS Media Demo watermark in there. And the guy listened and he goes, well, it's totally different. I go, it's not. It's the same voice. And this voice that he thought was speaking a long dead language that linguists could not figure out, it was English said by a woman with an English accent because AVS Media is a company out of England.
Wow.
But he didn't want to hear the logic of it.
Right.
So
right.
that episode exists. If you go to Stitcher.com, look up Darkness Radio and go through our episodes, you can find the Is My Baby Save It episode or Ed Zasky, Ozosky. And you'll find the episodes out there and you can hear it for yourself. It's an intriguing view of when somebody wants to believe so bad they're willing to completely disregard everything else.
Yeah. For you to just completely destroyed him on air, I think it's awesome because if you're going to put yourself out there, you better be able to back up what you're saying.
Well, and I didn't destroy him as in like full of hate and rage, and it wasn't trying to. I was very sensitive to the fact this guy hung his career on this game-changing EVP, and this was it. And then in 30 seconds, I dissected it. I beat all of his linguists and all of his audio technicians that couldn't figure out how it came.
Yeah.
But he and I both know he's full of baloney because I know using that audio software, he gets that recording all the time because it populates every about a minute or 2 minutes in a recording because it's the free version. And they want you to buy the full version and they'll remove that audio watermark. So he'd heard it before. He was trying to pull something over on people.
Yeah. And there are lots of people out there. There was a Kenny Biddle, who's a famous skeptical guy who debunks a lot of stuff. He just put up a thing that related to me and my show about a psychic, a self-proclaimed psychic. He's supposed to be a forensic psychologist. This guy had contacted me to be on my show and was to the point where I had to block his phone number and block him on social media because he wouldn't leave me alone when I told him, no, you're not a good fit for my show, because I thought he was full of shit. And when I talked to him on the phone, well, he's been getting himself on like all these other podcasts that I guess I don't know if they don't know any better. They haven't done their research. And Kenny Biddle just did this big thing kind of exposing him as a fake for everything that he has kind of put out there. And so I call myself a skeptical believer because I'm skeptical until I see it myself or prove it to myself. And so we need people like that and like you, like who's not afraid to say, no, this is not right. Like you're putting out something that is not kosher, and we need to make sure people understand that.
Yeah, but I also think you have to be cautious when calling people out. I will have a guest on like that from time to time, and here's why. And this isn't to call you out for not having him on. I'm sometimes just as interested in the psychology of why somebody believes something. So I want to hear out their story. Why do you believe you can do this? Why do you believe you saw this? Why do you believe you were abducted? Why do you believe you fathered alien children? What is the belief system you have that puts you in that mindset? I think that's equally fascinating.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I'm doing it to prove that they're nuts, because it's a very real reality to them.
Yeah.
But I've known Kenny for a while. I don't agree with some of his tactics. The problem with some of the quote unquote skeptics is they're more bullies than they are skeptics. They, instead of having a rational conversation, they like to go over the top of you and yell and tell you you're a liar and you're a fake and you're a fraud, instead of having a back and forth. And I'm not saying Kenny Biddle does that, but a lot of skeptics are like that. And like Dr. Michael Shermer, I really respect the guy. Ben Radford, I really respect him as skeptics. We've had great, not debates, but open conversations. And even though they're two of the biggest skeptics in the world, they're very open to having a conversation. They still may think I'm nuts at the end, and I may think they're completely brain dead because they're not willing to even consider the option. But it's an interesting conversation. But then you have some that get out there, and I was witness to Kenny kind of getting after a couple people that I believed he should not have gone after, or at least in the way he did. But, we all have our way and position in life. I just think that when you're a skeptic, you need to take it just as cautiously as you would if you're an investigator who believes. And it's easy to sit on the outside of the aquarium and judge the fish in it than it is to be in the fish tank with the fish and figuring out, well, how the hell do I breathe in here? How do I move around? Where am I going to find my food? Right. So when you're in the paranormal, it's easier to bash people in it than it is to put yourself in the field and go out to these locations. That's what Ben Radford does. He wants to believe.
Yeah.
But he'll go out and put himself in the story and show you why it doesn't add up or why it didn't prove to be true. I appreciate that. So I think it's in the way you handle it. And please understand, I'm not attacking Kenny Biddle.
Yeah,
nice guy. I don't like some of his approach. I don't like the way some of these people do things, but without hearing the full episode or seeing what he did, or did he give this guy a chance to talk to him about it, or was he just looking at it? When you get an overview, it's easy to pick things apart. But until you actually get in the mud and in the mix and start seeing it for yourself, of how everything really went down, it's hard to judge it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just speaking from my own experience with this particular guy that he just called out. And he did give the guy an opportunity to talk about it and to defend himself, and the guy didn't. But and I don't agree with everything that Kenny Biddle does either. I just think in this particular case, as I was talking about, I had experiences with this guy, and it was kind of the way that he harassed me, and I've had other people message me now to tell me that he harassed them too. It kind of was vindicating, I guess, a little, that he's getting called out.
But it makes you wonder on the other side, and I don't know what your version of harassment is, but imagine, okay, a skeptic wants to be heard to prove to you. What if you fully believed 100% that you were the child of an alien hybrid?
Yeah.
Okay. You want that chance. And then if people are telling you, no, this just doesn't fit for me, I'm having a hard time believing you, that would be frustrating. That's why I like to give people a platform, because let's hear this guy out. Why is he of this? And again, I'm not putting you down for your take on it, but sometimes it's got to be frustrating to the true believer. I've watched friends of mine that are mediums that do insane things, that there is no cold reading. It's not just, oh, you have somebody in your family, a J name, and they're here and they're dead and they love you and they want you to know you need to take care of yourself. That's generic, right? I've watched mediums in a room meeting somebody for the first time say, I've got a man here. He's like a grandfather figure to me. He's showing me a pink Cadillac, but it's got a beat up green hood, and he's shaking his head and pointing at the hood. And the guy's like, oh my God, my grandfather's pride and joy was this pink Cadillac. And one day my grandmother parked in the wrong place. Something fell and ruined the hood. The only replacement he could find was this ugly green hood, and it drove him nuts. How the hell did this medium pick that out of the ether? Right. So I'm open to that. I want to see those. That's mystifying to me. So, I love that aspect. Do I believe every medium is truly mediumistic? No. Do I believe that there are people out there doing harm making these claims? Yes. But do I believe that there are also people out there who may not be talented mediums, but are healers and have helped somebody in one gallery session get over something that 10 years on a psychologist's couch might not have? I do believe that too. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I like to sit back, and I'm a people watcher. I'm an examiner of life, and I like to watch how this works out. I've been at gallery sessions where I think, boy, this person is completely cold reading. And he's talking to this heavy set girl with kind of greasy hair who can't make eye contact, and she's looking at the floor. I'm picking up. So it's something about your mother. Is your mother here with us? No, she passed away. Okay, this is your mother, right? That's obviously a leading question.
Right.
And your mom wants you to know she loves you so much. And slowly you see that heavyset girl start to look up. And she wants you to know that you are beautiful. You have to stop being so mean to yourself. You have to stop worrying about what the rest of the world feels. And slowly this girl keeps looking at more. And she's proud of you. And she knows you're not happy with who you are or what you're doing. But she knows you're capable of making better choices. She knows that if you start to give yourself some slack and allow yourself to just realize you're human, you can be better than you are. And this girl just starts crying, and your mom loves you so much, and blah, blah, blah. And then 2 years later, I run into this woman at another deal. She's 100 pounds lighter. She's taking care of herself. And I'm like, hey, it's great to see you. That talk turned my life around. So to me, it's like, how do you judge what works and what doesn't? Setting somebody's intent in their mind and changing the way they perceive themselves, that's a powerful method. So it's like I said, I'm not as quick to judge anymore as I once was, because I see good and I see bad in both sides of this. I just see it depends on who it is. Now, if you've got a psychic who's bilked somebody out of tens of thousands of dollars because they need to burn the money to get the curse off of you, and all of a sudden this guy's driving a Bentley, right?
Right.
He didn't have that money before. So, there are abusers, but there's abusers in every field of business, business. So, I don't know. That's just my takes on it. I'm a lot more open-minded and accepting to watch how things play out. And sometimes things, working with Cindy Kaza, I love Cindy. She is like a sister to me. When I first started working with her, I was well aware of her. She's a very popular and well-known medium, but I'd never worked with her. And I'm very skeptical of mediums and psychics. And we went out and we started doing these Holzer Files episodes. And I had the file, and I read through the file, and I read through what Hans Holzer's mediums picked up on. And Cindy goes in and picks up something completely off the charts. Nothing even close to what's in these case files. But I take the notes. I listen to what she's saying, and then the next day I sit down with historians and experiencers, and lo and behold, what do you know? The experiencers like, I had this one really weird experience, and then she tells me something she's never told anybody before, and it matches exactly with what Cindy saw. Or the historian, I go, I'm just curious. My medium picked up on a pink Cadillac with a green hood. Does that make sense in any way? Oh my God, I can't believe you brought that up. And then they explain what it meant to the case. And sometimes that was the key that unlocked everything to what we were investigating. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because it doesn't fit your understanding or paradigm.
Right.
And sometimes people, when it comes to mediums, and I'm not trying to be on a soapbox here, but sometimes when it comes to mediums, they're very easy to dismiss because we can't see or hear or experience what they are. We want to judge them that they are frauds, that they are cold reading people. And then you see them at events. I saw Chris Fleming at one of the very first events that I watched him do his mediumship at. We were doing a quote unquote seance. Basically, it was just a gallery session where he was sitting at this huge table and all these people were sitting around the table. And there were so many people, we had to create another ring around the table of chairs. And we were sitting there and Chris Fleming starts doing this reading. And he goes, I have a man here and he's making this motion. So he's either like a tennis pro or a golfer. But he's very well to do. And his name is Larry. Nobody? Okay. He's showing me like in the woods, he's got this A-frame house and wow, the whole front is glass. So you could see everything from inside the house. So he's pretty specific now, right? Yeah. He said, I've seen a guy named Larry. He's either a tennis or golf pro. He owns an A-frame house with a front made of glass. Nobody responds. And I can see the flop sweat on poor Chris's brow. And then he goes, in the yard, he's showing me a goose, but it's not a wild goose. It's somebody's pet. And I'm getting the name like Chip. The goose's name is Chip. Nobody responds. So Chris tries for a few more minutes to connect, and then he finally tells his spirits, listen. And I'm feeling bad for my friend. I'm feeling bad for Chris Fleming because obviously he's not connecting. And then he gives the perfect answer to tell people when you screw up. Well, maybe it's, I'm in a casino. There's millions of people going through this every day. This could be somebody that's attached to a worker here, which is good plausible deniability, right?
Right.
So we all kind of roll our eyes. He goes, all right, I'm clearing that spirit. I'm going to try to connect with the next spirit. And he's quiet and he's focused. And the girl sitting 2 away from me leans over to her friend closest to me. And she goes, what's really weird? I didn't have an Uncle Barry, but I had an Uncle Larry. But, he was Uncle Lawrence, but he went by Larry and he was a golf pro, but he also played tennis and he owned an A-frame house with a glass front. And he gave me a goose for my 10th birthday, but its name wasn't Chip. It was Dale. And I looked at her and I go, what? And Chris pops it up. He goes, what's going on? I'm trying to focus. And I go, hold on, Chris, this woman sitting next to me had an Uncle Larry, not Barry, who was a tennis pro, who was also a golfer, who owned an A-frame house with a glass front. And for her 10th birthday, he gave her a goose named Dale, not Chip, Dale. And he looks at her and I go, could that message be for her? And he looks right at her and he goes, nope, and moved on. And I felt so horrible for him. And I asked her later, I go, why would you have thought that would have been for anybody else? She goes, because I don't believe in this. I was hoping my friend was going to get a reading because she really wanted to connect with her mother. And why would my Uncle Larry come talk to me?
Yeah.
But how the hell could he have gotten all that information?
Right.
That's crazy. But she hung him out to dry. Had she not made the mistake of leaning over and telling her friend, he would have looked like a complete failure that night. He did 2 more gallery readings like that. Nobody owned up to it. Nobody. As soon as we ended it and we're all standing there and Chris is like, Dave, I feel so humiliated. I've never been like this. I know what I was seeing. This guy walks right up to us and he goes, that second reading, I think it might have been for me. And he gives us every detail that Chris said. And Chris goes, why didn't you say anything? He goes, well, I don't know. I didn't know if this was making sense for anybody else. He goes, we asked. Nobody else raised their hand. Why didn't you raise your hand? He goes, I don't know. I just couldn't process that this could possibly be for me. So I called out loud so the whole audience heard. Here's the second guy I found it. And the third guy comes over to me a few minutes later and he goes, I don't want you to call me out because I'm embarrassed. But it was very personal. That third reading was about the little boy that drowned. That was my son who drowned. And I knew if I would have started talking, I would have gotten emotional and I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of this group of people. And I'm like, okay, can I at least mention that the third person has made themselves known to us? And he goes, yeah, that's fine. He goes, and I'm really sorry, Chris. I didn't mean to make you feel stupid. And Chris is like, yours, I understand because it was something that was your son.
Right.
That passed away at a very early age. I can understand how that might catch you off guard. So we made the announcement. But 3 readings, nobody owned up to it until later. So, like I said, I don't judge because I've seen that kind of stuff happen. I've seen people tell a psychic, nope, that's not me. Nope, that doesn't make any sense. And then 2 weeks later will tell me, holy crap, I got home, was telling my mom how bad this medium was. And that, this name, Persephone, and he was picking up this name Persephone, and my mom's jaw hit the floor and said, well, Grandma Agnes, her first name was Persephone, but she hated it. She went by her middle name, Agnes.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Incredible. Yeah.
So when you see that stuff, that's why I said I try to be tolerant of a lot of this stuff, because there is no definitive answer. There is no one line. I don't even know that Chris Fleming or John Edward or Sarah Lemos or Cindy Kaza are really even getting the answers from the dead. Maybe they're getting it from our own memories, our own genetic memory blocks, right? Science is proving we carry genetic memory of trauma from our past. So our grandfather may have survived World War II, but all that panic and anxiety may explain why I deal with anxiety and panic in my life. I don't have anything to be anxious about. I'm a white male in America who makes a good living. What would I have depression and anxiety for?
Right.
But it's that genetic memory from my grandfather that could be carried over. Science is talking about that. So, maybe they're picking up information from us that's no less impressive to me than if they're talking to a dead person.
Yeah, one of the amazing things that I saw one time on Ghost Hunters, they were actually investigating a guy's house, and he claimed to be a medium. And when Jason Hawes sat down on the couch with him, the guy sitting across from him in the chair, and they've got the thermal camera on Jason and the medium guy, and all of a sudden you see both of their heat signatures start to intertwine when this guy starts reading Jason. And and it
right
as a thermal camera shouldn't
and they had
do
that thermal camera right, and then all of a sudden it kind of pushed away at Grant when he was asking something personal or something. I saw that, right, and that's interesting. You're able to track energy, so there's definitely something there. It's but we don't know how to read it yet. We don't know how to understand it, and that's why I think the paranormal is so fascinating, because every time you think you find an answer, it opens up another set of questions. My mom and I were very close. If anybody was going to come back to me as a ghost, it would be my mom. We talked about it on her deathbed. Mom, come back. And she's like, I will. And then she passed away, and I've never once seen her. I haven't even dreamed about my mom. And I'm like, why in God's green earth would that be true?
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe the fact is, I'm also a guy that deals with anxiety and depression. And hear me out on this. What if my mom comes back to me and says, there is an afterlife. We all get to keep coming back. We all get another chance at life. We all get to go to heaven. Next time I'm feeling really dark and I'm in a bad place, maybe I pull the trigger.
Right.
Because we get to reboot. So maybe not getting that confirmation, but I've had other confirmations that are weird, but I can't say it's definitely my mom. It's incredibly precise coincidence. So, that's interesting and keeps me involved and interested, but I can't 100% say, yep, that's my mom. So maybe I'm not supposed to know the answer. Maybe because if we all knew that we definitely get another chance at life or a reboot, or we can come back as Marilyn Monroe, out of time and out of sync, maybe more people just start offing themselves because they're in a bad place today.
Right. Or start living more recklessly, than they normally would. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard of a lot of mediums say that we're not, they can't get those type of answers to questions because we're not really meant to know that.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, maybe I'm just convincing myself of that, but I also know my mom knows that I dealt with depression, and if there really is a spirit realm, she still knows I deal with depression, and that there are those dark days that still hit me that make no sense. And maybe she knows I can't tell him. I can never appear to him and let him know that there is definitely an afterlife, because his journey isn't over, and I don't want him falling weak one day.
Yeah.
I know, kind of a dark piece there, but I'm just saying, I think there's ways to look at these things,
Right. And the more that I've talked to people, and the more I do the paranormal, the more that I see that it's all interconnected somehow, whether it's cryptids or aliens or ghosts. What do you think about that? That because there's all these synchronicities and all these connections between all this phenomena.
I think it is very possible that this is all interconnected. Many things exist all at once. We may never see it, and it may not affect us here, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Listen, I live in Minnesota. I'm far away from Hurricane Katrina and the horrible things that it did to New Orleans. Does that mean it didn't happen because I wasn't there and I didn't see it? No, but I'm removed from it, so it doesn't mean as much to me.
Right.
Right? So maybe there's connections, maybe there's not. But I believe there's probably a lot of things going on we're not aware of because it's not in our lexicon. You know, why is it that somebody can believe in ghosts and demons, but not Bigfoot and aliens? Why is it some people can believe in Bigfoot and aliens and not in ghosts? Why is it somebody can believe in Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, alien abductions, but the idea of fairies is out of control? You know, we have our comfort zones, we have our paradigms, but sure, if all of this is going on and there really are interdimensional walls collapsing from time to time, maybe the reason we see Bigfoot for 1 second is he did walk through our universe and then popped into the other universe, and that's why we only see footsteps that go 10 feet and then disappear, and how we can be on his tail and then he's gone. Maybe that's the same portals that aliens use to come from one part of the universe to us or from another dimension to us. So it very well could be.
Yeah, or the same portals the missing 411 people are disappearing into.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's all interesting. I just love the deep dives, and that's one reason why I wanted to talk to you, because I know you'll get into the weeds with me and deep dive into some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So what else do you have going on? You got the Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader that you're putting out every week, and you also have lots of events.
Yeah, every Monday and Friday we do a new episode of the Paranormal 60, and you can find it on the Paranormal 60 YouTube channel. We keep the episodes up there if you can't watch them live. You can also find the audio versions of each one of those podcasts on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Deezer, just about any place you listen to podcasts. And then I do live events where I'll go all over the United States or around the world. I do have 4 spots open to join me in Ireland this June. And I'm going to be going with a group of about 30, 40 people. We're going to go see haunted castles, haunted hotels, cemeteries, amazing history, gorgeous locations. And we have 4 spots open. I have an event that we're going to be doing in June as well, at the beginning of June. It is an event at the Palmer House Hotel, 2 one-day events. One's on a Friday, one's on a Saturday. It's an educational. We're calling it the Spirits and Sixth Sense Weekend. Sarah Lemos, the medium and psychic, will do a 2-hour presentation and class on how to open up your own abilities and try to communicate or be more in tune to a location to have an experience. Bill Chappell's going to do an experiment and has a new tool that he'll be introducing, and everybody gets to take home with them. He's the engineer who's created a lot of the cool paranormal equipment you see on different TV shows. And it's going to be a way to try to, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a cool experiment that will hopefully help you heighten psychic awareness or your own intuition. And we're going to play with that. And then I'll be doing a 2-hour presentation with Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files on ghost hunting and how to ghost hunt, going through the protocols. And then that night we're going to go into a practical ghost hunt, and we're going to use some of the tools and skills that we've learned that day to investigate the Palmer House Hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota. And then we'll be repeating the same thing on Saturday for another group. I'll be out in New Jersey at the Unity Paracon. I'll be at the Paracon at Mansfield Reformatory coming up. So there's a lot of great places. People can go to darknessevents.com. That's darknessevents.com, and they'll find all the information there. Or go to paranormal60.com. That's paranormal60.com. And click on the events tab, and it'll show you all the cool things and places I'm going to be this year.
And also, I know you've got some other TV stuff coming up that you were filming last year that you can't really talk about yet, but I'm excited to see what you have coming up. Sadly, the Holzer Files only got 2 seasons, but COVID kind of messed up a lot of stuff. But
well, I think truthfully, what was wrong with Holzer Files is the title. Not enough people knew who Dr. Hans Holzer was, kind of one of the forefathers of paranormal investigating here in America.
Yeah.
I think if it would have been called Holzer's Ghost Files, we'd have been going for many years. It's a great show. I'm very proud of it. It's on Discovery Plus and Travel Channel. But Cindy Kaza and I did get rolled over onto a new program that hopefully will be out here in the next couple of months. Shane Pittman was rolled over onto a different program on a different network that'll be coming out hopefully in the next few months. So you'll get to see all 3 of us again out there, just not together on the Holzer Files.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the Holzer Files. I don't want to dive into it since we're winding down here, but some of the evidence y'all caught was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I was so proud, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Even if it's only 2 seasons, I got to walk in the footsteps of Dr. Hans Holzer and
Yeah.
reinvestigate some of his original case files. And we get to share that original audio, video, photographs from his cases that are 40, 50, 60 years old, hearing from him, hearing from his mediums, and then we get to put ourselves into these places. It was truly an amazing opportunity and a chance to revisit history and become part of the history.
And Cindy Kaza and Shane Pittman are both awesome as well.
Yeah, they are.
If any of y'all listening haven't seen the Holzer Files, go check it out on Discovery Plus. It is a great show, great series.
Let me just tell people it's HOLZER, HOLZER Files, FILES. You can look it up that way, Holzer Files. And yeah, please watch the series. Check it out for yourself. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, contact me. They can email me, Dave at paranormal60.com. That's paranormal60.com. Dave at paranormal60.com. Thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to blather on and on about things today.
Oh, not a problem. My pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Have a good day. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, head over to the Unseen Paranormal Lounge on Facebook for all the latest updates and discussions about the show. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, or at unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe to help more people discover the show. The Unseen Paranormal Podcast is proud to be the ambassador for paranormal for Verbal.com. A big thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. You can find more of his music on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify. And as always, thank you for listening.
To the end of the line. Whoa. I can feel you as you pass the other side.